The blizzard had no mercy. It came without warning, swallowing the frozen plains in white noise and cutting vision down to a few steps at most. Snow slammed into everything that stood against it, as if the planet itself was trying to erase all signs of life. On this distant world, storms like this killed quickly and without apology. The human moved through it anyway. His name was Elias Ward, though few people used it anymore. To most records, he was listed as a retired veteran, discharged after 3 decades of service across half a dozen star systems. To the storm, he was just another warm shape trying not to freeze. Elias pulled his hood tighter and leaned into the wind. His old combat suit was patched and worn, no longer military standard, but it still worked. Heat coils hummed softly along his spine. Each step was slow, careful. He had learned long ago that rushing only made mistakes come faster. The listening outpost was supposed to be only another hour away, an old structure, left behind after the border war ended. The coalition no longer cared about it, but Elias did. He had been the one who helped build it years ago, back when this world still mattered to someone. When the automated signal went quiet 2 days earlier, he volunteered to check it himself, not because anyone asked him to, but because that was how humans like him were made. If something broke, you fixed it. The wind screamed louder. Elias paused. Something was wrong. Through the storm, his visor picked up a heat signature that did not match rock or machinery. It was faint, unsteady, and moving badly against the wind. He turned his head, narrowing his eyes, and adjusted the visor's focus. There, to the left, down a shallow slope. At first, he thought it was debris. Then it moved again. Elias cursed softly under his breath and changed direction. Every instinct born from war told him this was a bad idea. The coalition species that lived here, the Krelith, avoided humans whenever possible. Encounters rarely ended well, but the heat signature was too weak to ignore. Whatever it was dying. As he drew closer, shapes emerged from the white. A tall, thin figure knelt in the snow, its body bent forward as if crushed by the storm. Around it, smaller shapes huddled together, barely moving. Elias stopped 10 meters away and raised both hands slowly, palms open. "I'm not armed," he said aloud, his voice calm and steady. The wind tore at his words, but his suit amplified them forward. "I'm not here to hurt you." The figure turned. The Krelith widow's eyes reflected pale blue through the snow. Her skin, normally dark and smooth, was cracked with cold stress. A torn thermal cloak hung uselessly from one shoulder. Behind her, 3 small figures pressed together, shaking. Fear hit Elias harder than the cold. He had seen that look before. On civilians on Earth, on colonies that burned, on children hiding behind walls, while soldiers argued over lines on a map. The widow hissed, a sharp defensive sound, and pulled the children closer. Her free hand moved toward a crude tool, barely more than sharpened metal. Elias stayed where he was. "You're freezing," he said. "Your heat field is failing." She did not answer. Krelith translators were common, but hers was damaged, blinking weakly against her throat. Elias slowly reached to his belt and unclipped a thermal pack. He rolled it gently across the snow, so it stopped halfway between them. "Heat," he said. "For them." The widow hesitated. The children's trembling worsened. One collapsed forward, too weak to stand. That decided it. She crawled forward, grabbed the pack, and dragged it back. As it activated, faint warmth spread. The children pressed against it immediately, breathing shallow but alive. Elias let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. "My name is Elias," he said. "I'm human." The widow flinched at the word. He nodded slowly. "I know. You were told we're monsters." Her eyes narrowed, but she did not deny it. Elias lowered himself into the snow, ignoring the bite of cold seeping through his boots. He made himself smaller, less threatening. "I was a soldier," he continued. "A long time ago. I fought in the war that killed your mate." The widow stiffened. Grief flared into anger, sharp and raw. "I didn't come here to justify that," Elias said quickly. "I didn't come to make excuses. He paused, choosing his next words carefully. I came because no one deserves to die alone in the snow. The storm howled around them, but something shifted in the air between human and alien. Not trust. Not yet. But something softer than hatred. The widow studied him. Her translator flickered and stabilized just enough to carry her voice. My bondmate fell to human fire, she said, her voice cracked. Our brood fled. The shelters were closed. Patrols hunt us. Elias nodded. I know how that goes. She tilted her head slightly, confused. After my wars, he said. There were places on Earth where doors closed to us too. Silence stretched between them, filled only by the storm. Elias glanced at the children. One was coughing. Small body racked with effort. They won't last the night out here, he said gently. I have shelter. Old outpost. Warm. Safe. The widow's grip tightened around her tool. Human trick. I get why you'd think that, Elias said. But if I wanted you dead, I wouldn't be sitting in the snow freezing with you. He removed his helmet slowly and set it beside him. The cold hit his face instantly, sharp and painful. But he welcomed it. Let her see him. Older. Scarred. Tired. No armor between us, he said. Just a man. The widow stared. Humans were supposed to be loud. Aggressive. Always armed. This one looked like a relic, worn down by time. The children huddled closer together. Another gust slammed into them, stronger than before. Elias felt the temperature drop even further. His suit warned him silently that exposure time was running out. The widow looked at the children, then at the storm, then back at Elias. Why? She asked. Why help us? Elias thought of names carved into metal walls, of friends buried under alien suns, of nights staring at stars, wondering what the fighting had meant. Because, he said slowly, I survived long enough to learn that winning a war doesn't mean much if you lose your soul doing it. The widow's eyes softened, just a fraction. She made a decision. Lead, she said. Elias stood carefully and reattached his helmet. He activated a beacon so the outpost would guide them in. Then he took the first step forward, walking slower than usual, so the children could follow. Behind him, the alien widow gathered her brood and moved through the storm at his back. The blizzard still raged, the cold still bit deep. But something important had already changed. For the first time since the war ended, a human and an alien walked the frozen world together, not as enemies, but as survivors. The outpost rose out of the storm like a broken tooth, half buried in ice and snow. Its outer lights were dead, and the metal walls groaned under the wind's pressure. Elias pushed the access panel with stiff fingers and waited as the system struggled to wake. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the door slid open with a tired hiss. Warm air spilled out. The alien widow stopped at the threshold, eyes wide. She had never seen a human shelter up close. It looked old, scarred, and patched together. But to her it felt like life itself. Inside, Elias said softly. Quickly, she guided the children in first. Elias followed last and sealed the door behind them. The wind slammed against the metal, angry at being shut out. Inside, the outpost was dim but stable. Emergency lights flickered on, casting long shadows. Elias moved fast despite the cold still clinging to his bones. He activated the heater core, then dropped his pack and pulled out rations, water units, and spare thermal wraps. The children collapsed near the heat vent. Their breathing slowly eased as warmth returned to their bodies. The widow knelt beside them, hands trembling as she checked each one, her fear slowly loosening its grip. Elias watched from a short distance, giving her space. He remembered medbays filled with wounded after battles. The same desperate checking. The same quiet prayers spoken in different languages. They'll live, he said after a moment. Cold didn't take them too far. The widow nodded, but tears slid down her face anyway. She did not bother to hide them. My name is Salith, she said at last. I did not think I would say my name to a human again. Elias inclined his head. I'm honored you did. She studied him carefully. Most humans I saw during the war shouted orders or fired weapons. You speak like someone who has already lost. Elias gave a small, tired smile. That's because I have. He sat against the wall, removing his gloves and flexing stiff fingers. The outpost hummed around them. Ancient, but loyal. For a while, they said nothing. The storm raged outside. But inside the shelter, there was only the soft sound of children breathing and the low hum of machines. Then the outpost scanner chimed. Elias frowned and stood, moving to the console. A red symbol blinked on the screen. Patrol, he muttered. Salith stiffened instantly. Krelith hunters? Krelith hunters? Yes, Elias said. 3 units. They're sweeping the area. Fear returned to her eyes. They will kill you, and then us. Elias studied the data. Not if they don't find us. He powered down non-essential systems, dimming the lights further. The outpost became quiet, almost lifeless. He activated a thermal dampener, old and unreliable, but better than nothing. They hunt humans, Salith said bitterly. They believe your kind cannot feel mercy. Elias looked at her. Do you believe that? She hesitated. I believed it, she admitted. Until today. The patrol signals drew closer. Elias slowed his breathing, the same way he had done 100 times behind enemy lines. He checked the seals, rerouted heat flow, and masked their signature as best he could. One of the children whimpered in their sleep. Salith reached for Elias's arm without thinking. If they hear, I know, Elias said quietly. I've got it. He moved to a storage locker and pulled out an old field generator. He set it near the children and activated a soft white noise field, just enough to mask sound without drawing attention. Minutes passed like hours. Through the scanner, Elias watched the patrol pause less than a kilometer away. Weapons powered, sensors sweeping. Salith whispered, Why stay? You could leave. They would only take us. Elias did not look away from the screen. I won't trade lives. She stared at him, struggling to understand. In her culture, survival often meant sacrifice. The weak were left behind, so the rest could endure. You would die for us? She asked. Elias answered without hesitation. I already did my share of dying in the war. I'm done letting fear decide who lives. The patrol lingered, then slowly moved on. One by one, their signals faded into the storm. Salith sagged in relief. Her legs gave out, and she sat heavily on the floor. For the first time since her mate had fallen, she allowed herself to believe her children might see another sunrise. You protected us, she said. Without violence, Elias powered systems back up. Violence is easy. Living with what it costs is harder. Quote. Later, when the children woke, Elias shared his rations. Simple food, plain taste, but warm. The children watched him cautiously, then ate with quiet hunger. One of them, the smallest, looked up at him. You smell like metal and snow, the child said through the translator. Elias chuckled softly. I get that a lot. Salith watched this exchange closely. Her understanding of humans was breaking apart, piece by piece. As the storm outside began to weaken, Salith asked, Why did your people fight so hard to reach the stars? Elias leaned back, thinking. Earth is beautiful, he said, but it's fragile. We learned early that if we stayed in one place, eventually something would wipe us out. Asteroid, plague, war. So we reached outward. And brought war with you, Salith said, not accusing, just stating truth. Yes, Elias agreed. We did. He met her gaze. But we also brought medicine, shelter, and the stubborn refusal to disappear. She considered that. The Krelith believed humans were dangerous because you never surrender. Elias nodded. That part is true. The hours passed. The storm weakened into light snowfall. Outside, the frozen world no longer screamed. Elias checked the outpost's long-range signal. It flickered weakly but held. "At first light," he said. "I can escort you to a neutral zone. Coalition aid station." Salith shook her head. "They will separate us. Question us. Punish me for accepting human help." Elias clenched his jaw. He had expected this. "There is another way," he said slowly. "Riskier." She listened. "The patrols rotate every 2 days," he explained. "There's an old supply tunnel beneath the ice, not on current maps. I helped dig it during the war. It leads beyond Coalition territory." Salith's eyes widened. "You would help us escape?" "Yes." "Why?" she asked again. "Why choose us?" Elias looked at the children, then back at her. "Because once, when I was young and bleeding in the dirt, an alien medic dragged me out of a kill zone. He was shot for it." Salith inhaled sharply. "He told me," Elias continued, "that if compassion dies, war never ends. I promised myself I'd pass that lesson on." The shelter grew quiet. Salith bowed her head deeply. "Then my children will remember your name," she said. "Even if my people curse it." Elias smiled sadly. "That's enough for me." Outside, the snow settled gently on the frozen plains. The war still existed in memory and scars. But inside the old outpost, something stronger was being rebuilt: trust. Morning came slowly on the frozen world. The sky shifted from deep black to pale gray, and thin light crept across the snow like a hesitant promise. The storm had finally spent itself. What remained was silence so deep it felt heavy. Elias was already awake. He stood near the outpost door, checking the scanner again and again. His body ached from the cold and from memories that never fully slept. Outside, the patrol signals were gone. But that did not mean safety. On worlds like this, danger only changed shape. Behind him, Salith stirred. The children were still asleep, curled close together near the heater. Color had returned to their skin. They would live. Elias allowed himself a brief moment of relief. "We should move soon," he said quietly. Salith nodded. "The tunnel?" "Yes, before the next sweep." They packed quickly. Elias left behind anything not essential. The outpost had served its purpose. He shut down the core and locked the door behind them, knowing no one might ever use it again. The tunnel entrance lay beneath a ridge of ice 1/2 kilometer away. Elias led the way, marking safe paths where the snow crust could hold weight. Salith followed, guiding her children carefully, trusting him with every step. The entrance was hidden under a sheet of frozen debris. Elias cleared it with practiced movements and activated an old access code. The ice shifted, revealing a narrow descent into darkness. Salith hesitated. "If this collapses..." "It won't," Elias said. "I reinforced it myself." They descended. The tunnel was cold but stable. Old lights flickered weakly along the walls. Elias moved slowly so the children could keep up. The sound of their steps echoed softly, swallowed by ice and stone. Halfway through, the ground shook. Elias froze. His visor lit up with sudden alerts. Above them, energy signatures flared. "Patrol," he said. "They're closer than expected." Salith pulled the children tight. "They tracked us." "Yes," Elias said grimly. "Probably caught the outpost's signal before I shut it down." The tunnel trembled again as something heavy moved across the surface. "They'll seal the exits," Salith whispered. "Trap us." Elias's mind raced. Old combat instincts kicked in, sharp and clear. "There's a junction ahead," he said. "Maintenance chamber. We can hide there." They reached it just as the tunnel lights flickered out. Darkness closed around them, broken only by Elias's suit glow. Above, voices echoed faintly through the ice. Krelith patrol units were deploying scanners, sweeping for movement. "They will find us," Salith said, voice shaking. "When they do, they will execute you." Elias knelt, so he was level with her. "Listen to me. When they come, I will speak." She stared at him. "Words will not stop them. They've stopped worse before," he said. "Trust me one more time." The ice above cracked open with a sharp metallic sound. Cold air rushed in as a hatch slammed down into the tunnel. Armed Krelith dropped through, weapons glowing. "Human," the lead unit barked. "Stand and submit." Elias rose slowly, hands open. He stepped forward, placing himself between the patrol and Salith's children. "I'm unarmed," he said clearly. "There's no threat here." "You trespass," the unit replied. "You aid fugitives." "Yes," Elias said. "I do." The patrol tightened their formation. "You will be terminated." Salith stepped forward, unable to stay silent. "He saved my brood. Without him, they would be dead." The lead unit's eyes flicked to her. "Your mate fell to humans. You defend one now?" Salith's voice broke. "My mate fell to war." "Not to this man." The patrol hesitated, but only briefly. "Stand aside," the unit ordered her. Elias shook his head. "No." The word echoed in the chamber. "I have fought your kind," Elias continued. "I have killed, and I carry that weight every day. But I will not add these children to that list by silence." The patrol raised weapons. Elias did not flinch. "You think humans won because we are cruel," he said. "We won because even when we are afraid, we choose each other. Even when it hurts." The lead unit paused. "Your kind devastated worlds." "Yes," Elias said, "and we rebuilt them, including yours." The unit's grip tightened. "You speak too freely for someone about to die." Elias met its gaze. "I speak because if you kill me, you will prove every fear that keeps this war alive." Silence filled the chamber. The children clung to Salith, eyes wide. Elias took a slow breath. "I am a veteran. I've buried friends on ice like this. I'm not asking for mercy for myself." He gestured behind him. "I'm asking you to decide what kind of future your people will remember." The patrol leader hesitated. Data streamed across its visor. Orders. Doctrine. Fear. Salith stepped forward fully now, placing herself beside Elias. "If you take him, you take me too," the patrol murmured. "This was unexpected." "He chose compassion," she said. "And it saved us. If that is a crime, then punish us all." The lead unit lowered its weapons slightly. "Your brood will grow remembering this moment," Elias said quietly. "So will ours." Wars end when someone decides to stop passing hatred forward. Time stretched. Finally, the lead unit powered down its weapon. "This encounter will be reported," it said. "You will leave Coalition territory immediately." Elias exhaled slowly. "We will." The patrol sealed the hatch and withdrew. The tunnel grew quiet again. Salith collapsed against the wall, shaking. "You spoke them down," she whispered. Elias sat heavily. "They spoke themselves down. I just reminded them they could." "Elias." There would be says. They rested only briefly. The tunnel exit opened onto a frozen valley beyond Coalition control. The sky there was clear, stars sharp and cold. Salith led her children into the open. Breathing deeply as if tasting freedom for the first time, she turned to Elias. "You cannot come with us." Elias nodded. "I know. They will hunt you." He smiled faintly. "They already were." Salith placed a hand over her heart. "You changed our fate." Elias looked back toward the tunnel, toward the war he could never fully leave behind. "No," he said. "You chose it. I just reminded you that you could." They stood there in the cold light, survivors of a war that refused to end quietly. And somewhere deep within the ice, old hatred cracked just a little more. The valley was wide and silent, stretching out beneath a pale sky that had not yet decided whether it would snow again. Thin ice crystals drifted slowly in the air, catching the light like scattered stars. Salith and her children moved forward carefully, each step taking them farther from the world that had hunted them. Elias stopped at the edge of the tunnel entrance. This was where his path ended. Salith turned back one last time. The children followed her gaze, their eyes fixed on the human who had walked through the storm for them. For a long moment, no one spoke. Words felt too small for what had been shared. "You could come with us," Salith said softly. "Beyond this valley, there are places where humans are not enemies." Elias shook his head. If I cross that line, the patrols will follow. You deserve peace, not a shadow. She understood. The truth of it hurt. One of the children stepped forward, small hands clenched. Will the snow take you? The child asked. Elias knelt, bringing himself down to their level. No, he said with a gentle smile. I've walked through worse. The child studied his face carefully, then pressed a small carved token into his hand. It was rough and simple, shaped from bone or stone. So you remember us, the child said. Elias closed his fingers around it. I will. Salith bowed her head deeply, a gesture of respect rarely given to outsiders. My people will tell stories of monsters, she said. But my children will tell a different one. Elias stood and stepped back. That's how change starts. They turned and continued into the valley. Elias watched until they were nothing more than shapes against the ice, then until even those were gone. Only then did he turn around. The walk back toward Coalition space felt longer. His body was tired, his supplies low, and the storm scars on his suit warned of future failure. Still, his steps were steady. By the time he reached higher ground, patrol drones were already circling. They did not fire. Instead, they followed at a distance. Silent and watchful, Elias did not raise his hands this time. He simply kept walking. At the outpost, Coalition officials were waiting. Armed units stood in a loose formation, tension clear in their posture. The lead officer stepped forward. You violated territorial orders, the officer said. You aided fugitives. Yes, Elias replied calmly. You interfered with internal enforcement. Yes. The officer studied him. Why? Elias met their gaze. Because I was there. Murmurs passed through the gathered units. You risked reigniting conflict, the officer said. Elias shook his head. No. I prevented a smaller one from growing. The officer was silent for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, they asked, Do all humans act this way? Elias thought carefully before answering. No, he said honestly. But enough of us do. The officer looked away, unsettled. You will be escorted off-world, they decided. This incident will be reviewed. I win. I win. I win. I win. I I Elias accepted the ruling without protest. As he was guided toward the transport, news of the encounter spread faster than anyone expected. Patrol logs were reviewed. Sensor data confirmed the lack of violence. Testimony from the patrol leader was recorded, hesitant but truthful. Questions followed. Why had a human chosen mercy? Why had Krelith patrols stood down? Why had no weapon been fired? The Coalition did not like questions without easy answers. Elias was placed aboard a small civilian transport, bound for a neutral station. The ship lifted off, carrying him away from the frozen world. He watched the planet shrink beneath them, its storms swirling like unfinished thoughts. At the station, he expected to disappear into paperwork and silence. Instead, representatives asked to speak with him. First one, then another. They asked about the tunnel, about the widow, about his words. Elias answered simply. He did not dramatize. He did not defend himself. He told the truth, plain and unadorned. I did what any human who remembers the cost of war should do, he said. Recordings of his testimony spread quietly through Coalition channels. Then, less quietly, Krelith civilians heard parts of the story. So did human settlers on border worlds. It became something people discussed in low voices, then in open forums. A patrol that did not fire. A human who did not run. Weeks passed. On another world, Salith and her children reached safety. Aid workers provided shelter and food. The children recovered fully. At night, Salith told them stories not of the war, but of a human who had walked into a blizzard and spoken instead of fighting. The children listened with wide eyes. They repeated his name until it felt familiar, not frightening. Back on the neutral station, Elias prepared to leave again. No one had stopped him. No charges were filed. Instead, something else happened. A coalition mediator approached him before departure. "The patrol leader has requested reassignment," the mediator said. They cited personal reconsideration. Elias absorbed that quietly. "There is discussion," the mediator continued, "about revising engagement protocols in storm zones." Elias allowed himself a small smile. As his transport prepared to depart, Elias stood at the viewport, looking out at the stars. He felt old, but lighter than he had in years. The bone token rested in his pocket. He thought of all the battles humanity had fought, of all the times they had been told they were too stubborn, too aggressive, too dangerous to coexist. Some of that was true, but so was something else. Humans endured. Humans learned. And sometimes, when the universe expected violence, they answered with words strong enough to stop it. The transport jumped to faster than light. On a frozen world far behind him, the snow continued to fall. But beneath the ice, old cracks spread silent signs of a future beginning to thaw. Humanity had not won a war that day. They had done something harder. They had reminded the galaxy what it meant to be human.